held in Turkey for more than 2 years. This year, hallelujah, our prayers have been answered, and he's with us here today. Pastor Brunson, where are you at? Pastor Brunson's deliverance goes right alongside what I think is my most memorable moment as the Secretary of State. Last year, on one of my missions to North Korea, I brought home Kim Dong-chol, Kim Hak-sung, and Tony Kim. We got off the plane here at about 2:30 a.m. At Andrews Air Force Base. President Trump was there, the Vice President was there to greet them. It was one of the most joyful moments of my life. As the three of them descended the stairs from the plane, they slipped me a little note. It was on an index card. I stuck it inside my coat pocket. And when I got home, I woke my wife up. It was early in the morning. And my wife, Susan, and I sat down to read the card. It was Psalm 126. Quote, "The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy." I keep it framed in my office today. I do so because it reminds me of the power of faith in even the most trying times. There are so many around the world who are longing for the right to worship freely, without fear, without persecution. Their faith gets them through these trying times. You all came here because you understand that it is our responsibility to help them. We're all in this fight together. You can be sure that the United States will be out in front defending the God-given, unalienable right of all human beings to worship as they choose. And I know, and I hope, that you will all stand with us. I hope good people everywhere will see that our movement is just getting started. I hope, too, they see the ever-increasing enthusiasm all throughout the world to defend religious freedom. And when they do, I'm sure that the next ministerial will be even bigger than this one. Thank you all for coming. God bless your work. God bless the United States of America, and may the good Lord bless all of you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We're now entering the time to hear from all of you, our friends and allies in this fight for freedom of religion or belief. We've invited an unprecedented number of like-minded governments and organizations to discuss what more we can do to combat persecution, defend religious minorities, and promote religious freedom. We know you support religious freedom or you wouldn't be here. We know you condemn religious persecution, either from government or non-state actors. Secretary just laid out several actions we are taking. However, the challenge is bigger than any one government alone can do. Over this day, we hope to hear more from each of you about new actions and initiatives you will undertake. Together, we can make a difference and will make a difference. Regarding the format, each minister-level official will have 4 minutes to speak. We'll start a time clock countdown. 4 minutes, I'll ask you to wrap up. And considering the very impressive turnout, please respect your colleagues and stay within the allotted time. We are committed to giving every delegation who wishes to speak the opportunity to take the floor. We will have a written statement submitted as well. As we move down the ranks of speaker, however, we will need to reduce the amount of time. And again, we appreciate your understanding and cooperation. With that, I will give the floor to the initial speaker, which will be from New Zealand, the Right Honourable Winston Raymond, the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand and Minister of Foreign Affairs. New Zealand.
Colleagues, it's our responsibility to be here today to record New Zealand's strong commitment to the common endeavour of fostering respect for the right to freedom of religion and belief. And Washington is an appropriate location for this conference because the United States has a special place in the history of advancing religious freedom through Thomas Jefferson's Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom in 1786 and by codifying religious freedom and freedom of expression in the First Amendment of the US Constitution in 1791. New Zealand also has a long history of supporting the right to freedom of thought, conscience, religion and belief, both at home and abroad. On 15 March this year, the freedom to practice one's religion safely, free from violence, free from hate, took on an unimaginable new relevance for our nation. It was a day, a simple act of prayer, of practicing one's faith and religion, led to the loss of 51 peaceful Muslim worshippers. And the devastating impact of this loss was sadly magnified by the live streaming and widespread sharing online of these terrorist attacks against our Muslim community. In a country that practices religious tolerance, an attack on one of us, observing our beliefs, is an attack on all of us. Let me assure you that New Zealand is and will remain a safe and open, tolerant society, one with fundamental freedoms protected at its core. We utterly reject such religious-based violence. The deep national grief New Zealanders feel in the wake of the March 15 attack reminded us of how dearly we treasure those freedoms. It was also a warning of how we must constantly work to secure them. We are acutely aware of the impact that the rise of hateful narratives based on race, religion, or diversity can have on religious freedom. For people to be free and to feel free, to practice their religion safely, we must go beyond legislative frameworks to address and reject all forms of intolerance in our societies. And one important area of our focus is how we can build a more socially inclusive New Zealand. A key element of this will be fostering greater interfaith dialogue and understanding across all levels of society. The responses we witnessed after 15 March this year across New Zealand demonstrated the unifying power of interfaith and intercultural understanding of the common themes of compassion and respect for human life and dignity across religions and belief systems. This focus on tolerance and diversity reflects the close relationship between the right to freedom of religion and belief and of the right to freedoms of opinion and expression. These rights have a mutually reinforcing effect, enabling and encouraging the free expression of religion and belief, as well as the exchange of ideas, contributes to combating intolerance and builds well-informed and politically mature societies. In summation, colleagues, New Zealand reiterates its concern at increasing levels of violence and discrimination based on or in the name of religion or belief that are occurring across the globe. In particular, the persecution of religious minorities through violence and discrimination that not only undermines their religious freedoms, but their enjoyment of many other basic rights, such as the right to speak freely without fear of persecution. In our discussions on freedom of religion and belief, we must remember the diversity this right encompasses. It encompasses the right not to believe. It is not limited to religion, but includes agnostic and atheistic beliefs, as well as matters of conscience. Ongoing attacks and discrimination are a sobering reminder that the international community must remain united in promoting freedom of thought, conscience, religion, and belief of all persons everywhere. For its part, New Zealand stands ready to work with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. will now call on His Excellency Sheikh Khalid Ahmed Mohammed, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Bahrain.
Thank you, sir. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Secretary Pompeo and Ambassador Brownback, for convening this conference once again to continue our work to ensure religious freedom across the globe, a universal and unalienable right that is central to the human experience and vital to promoting peace and stability. Since last July, and thanks to the efforts of many countries here, awareness of religious freedom and its importance has grown. The large and engaging attendance today shows the commitment we all share to promote religious freedom and end religious persecution. None of us are immune to acts of hate. Crimes targeting innocent people based on their religious belief affects and hurts us all. I salute those who spoke for their courage and for their perseverance, and I offer my deepest condolences to them and their families for their loss. And we commend the true leadership shown by Prime Minister of New Zealand when the tragic events shook that peaceful country. Extremism, hate, and sectarianism remain as dangerous and challenging as ever. We need to redouble our efforts to challenge and address extremist narratives wherever they arise. We must be vigilant in monitoring hate speech and extremist ideologies spread via social media. We must tackle the ideas before they manifest into actions. We will only succeed if we adopt a collective stance and commit our resources and efforts in joint effort. The Middle East region, once a model for religious diversity and mutual prosperity, has sadly regressed. The spread of extremist organizations in recent years, such as Daesh, and Nusra, and Hezbollah, brought along with it violence, destructions, crime against humanity, and an increase in extremist and sectarian discourse that continues to threaten the region. Combating these groups is a vital part of protecting religious freedom in the world, and I commend the United States of America in recognizing the threat that Hezbollah and its affiliates pose to the region and their efforts in combating the terrorist organization. Religious freedom and diversity are matters dear to the heart of every Bahraini, the majority of whom were born and raised with neighbors of varying faiths. As a proud majority Muslim country, we are guided by the Quranic verse, chapter 49, verse 13. O mankind, indeed we have created you male and female, and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Verily, the noblest of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. In Bahrain, mosques, churches, synagogues, and temples across the street from one another. We have over 19 churches to serve the thriving Catholic, Orthodox, Coptic, and Evangelical church communities. And construction is underway for the Lady of Arabia Cathedral, which will provide a larger space for our Catholic community than the current church first constructed in 1939. Bahrain has several Hindu temples, including a 200-year-old Hindu temple that is still in active use, Sikh temple, and the only functioning synagogue on the Arabian Peninsula. In addition to Baha'i and Zoroastrian community practicing their faith in complete freedom. Religious freedom is embedded in our history and is a cornerstone of our identity under the leadership of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. We are protecting and enhancing our proud heritage and historical legacy. The Constitution of Bahrain protects inviolability of places of worship, as well as freedom to engage in religious observances and to participate in religious processions. Religious violence, incitement to hatred, and sectarianism have no place in our society and are alien to our history as we are a welcoming place for people of all ethnicities and faiths. 2 years ago, His Majesty King Hamad issued the Kingdom of Bahrain Declaration. The content of the declaration reflects Bahrain experience. The declaration recognizes Bahrain's experience enjoying promoting religious freedom. The declaration recognizes the divine gift of freedom of choice, unequivocally rejects compelled observance, and declares that every individual has the freedom to practice their religion. Acknowledging that people of all faiths should be accorded the right to congregate to worship, educate, celebrate, and practice the requirement of their respective faiths. The declaration states also, it is the responsibility of government to respect and protect equally both religious minorities and majorities. The King Hamad Global Center for Dialogue and Peaceful Coexistence, launched in March 2018, continues to work towards sharing Bahrain's experience in peaceful coexistence and religious freedom. We are happy to have them actively participating in this conference. We are also in the process of appointing Bahrain's first ambassador at large for religious freedom. Excellencies, we are proud to be here with you at this conference to share our historical heritage and open society. We know we are on the right path, and we are determined to remain firmly on this path and never waver. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now hear from the Holy See, His Excellency Paul Richard Gallagher, the Secretary for Relations with States of the Holy See.
Excellencies, dear friends, the Holy See is grateful for the invitation to take part in this second annual Ministerial to advance religious freedom, and I appreciate this opportunity to offer some brief remarks on the enjoyment of this most fundamental and essential human right, religious liberty. The Holy See is committed and actively engaged in bringing a unified and strong collaborative voice among religious leaders. A good example of that may be found in the joint declaration signed by Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmed Al-Tayeb, on human fraternity this past 4th of February in Abu Dhabi. In that declaration, among many other interesting points, they resolutely declare that religions must never incite war, hateful attitudes, hostility and extremism, nor must they incite violence or the shedding of blood. These tragic realities are the consequence of a deviation from religious teachings. Another point from the declaration that merits being mentioned is the need to develop and respect the concept of citizenship. The concept of citizenship is based on the equality of rights and duties under which all enjoy justice. It is therefore crucial to establish in our societies the concept of full citizenship and reject the discriminatory use of the term minorities, which engenders feelings of isolation and inferiority. Indeed, the equal protection and rights under the law remains an essential ingredient of the fair application of justice for all, underscoring the equal dignity of every person. A few weeks after the papal trip to United Arab Emirates, the Holy Father made a visit to Morocco, and there, among other things, made an appeal together with His Majesty King Mohammed VI, recognizing the unique and sacred character of Jerusalem, Al-Quds Al-Sharif, and expressing their deep concern for its spiritual significance and its vocation as a city of peace. There needs to be both mutual autonomy and constructive collaboration between religious communities and the state. Although independent, both entities are striving to promote the well-being of the human person, who is at once both a citizen and religious. When the state and religion become conflated or blurred, as Pope Francis has rightly warned, religion risks being absorbed into the administration of temporal affairs and tempted by the allure of worldly power that in fact exploit it. The obfuscation of freedom to exercise one's religion freely in some places of the world remains a serious concern for the Holy See. On his return from Morocco, the Holy Father said, "Today we Christians face the danger that some governments will take away our freedom of conscience, which is the first step towards taking away freedom of worship. The answer is not easy, but let us not just accuse Muslims, let us also accuse ourselves for these countries where this is happening, and this should make us feel ashamed." Having considered a number of the more significant developments coming from the Holy See in the past year, I would like to offer a couple of other points for consideration. One is the indispensable role of religious education as a key to the prevention of any radicalization that could then lead to extremism. It is necessary that teaching in schools from the pulpits and through the media, especially through digital technology and social media, do not foment intransigence and extremist ideologies, but rather foster mutual respect, dialogue and reconciliation. In the condemnation of the abuse of religious freedom, especially when religious sentiment is used in an attempt to justify terrorism, there must also be a concomitant conviction and real commitment to stopping the market and flow of weapons and financing that fuels these atrocities against religious targets, whether persons or sites. Governments need to do everything possible to ensure that they are not collaborating with state or non-state actors that are involved in such reprehensible activities. Finally, the involvement of religious leaders in the collaborative effort with states and international organizations in the search for effective solutions to avoid further abuses to the freedom of religion, and advancing this fundamental human right should not be limited to the level of dialogue. And I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Lebanon, His Excellency Gebran Bassel, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigrants of Lebanon.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be part for the second time of the Ministerial to advance religious freedom. My presence here is not only a proof of the close relations between Lebanon and the United States, but also a manifestation of my deepest conviction and the attachment of my country to religious freedom, to protect minorities, and to preserve diversity in the Middle East. God made us a unique masterpiece of different races, colors, religions, and ethnicities. Some may choose to worship a single God creator. Others may prefer polytheism, and some others may favor atheism. There is no God better than the other as long as God is one, and as long as we are all united under humanity, protected by the law, and governed by traditions. I come from Lebanon, the country of coexistence between religions, the only country which embraces an equal power-sharing system amongst Christians and Muslims and their confessions. As such, no minority feels unsafe or threatened by the majority, and no confession fears violation of its rights. In Lebanon, our national pact is based on equal partnership, where everyone feels empowered and minorities' participation in decision-making is key. The Lebanese model proves that an inclusive system, including all factions, provides assurances to minorities and offers better alternatives to migration, guarantees a better governance, and prevents discrimination. It is what we call the consensual democracy, slow in decision-making, but efficient in social cohesion and national unity. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout history, the Middle East has suffered from religious persecution. The region that gave birth to the three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and their derived confessions, has witnessed bloody conflicts. The Middle East has been a war-torn zone, and its conflicts are only leading to mounting terrorism. The Jewish-Roman wars, the Christian-Muslim conflicts, the Sunni-Shia conflicts, the Arab-Israeli wars, the Arab-Arab conflicts, the Persian-Arab conflicts, the Turkish-Ottoman Arab conflicts. Recently, the region has been the birthplace of the uprising of Ethiopian Jews known as the Falasha, protesting against racism within the Israeli society. In the midst of this, Lebanon stands still as a unique model of equally shared power that protects religious freedom. Some may say the model is fragile and has been subject to disturbances, reaching a boiling point causing the paralysis of the system. This is true, yet our will as Lebanese to live together is stronger. Should one component vanish, Lebanon will lose its uniqueness, its message, and its raison d'etre. And the real threat to this is the implantation of displaced and refugees on its land and their integration in its society. I call upon you all to support Lebanon and its model so it doesn't crumble, leaving the stage to the dark face of unilateralism and monopoly. The Lebanese model of religious freedom is a need to humanity. Preserve it. Thank you.
Now hear from Slovakia, His Excellency Miroslav Lajcek, the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of the Slovak Republic.
Thank you, Excellencies, dear colleagues. First of all, many thanks to Secretary Pompeo for bringing us together for an extremely important purpose. We are all here because we agree that the right to believe or not to believe, that the freedom to profess and practice one's faith is birthright of every human being, bedrock of democracy, an essence of global peace and security. And we believe this right needs to be further advanced and better protected. Because as President Franklin D. Roosevelt put it more than 80 years ago, and I quote, "Where freedom of religion has been attacked, the attack has come from sources opposed to democracy. Where democracy has been overthrown, the spirit of free worship has disappeared," end quote. In Slovakia, these words resonate very loudly, especially this year, as we mark 30 years of liberty and religious freedom in Central Europe. So we approach this issue mindful of the past. All the more worrying it is that after decades of peace in Europe, this value is not enjoyed universally, and we can see troubling trends all across our continent and the world. For that reason, Slovakia is determined to reinforce safeguards of freedom of belief and to promote religious tolerance with focus on three things. First, education, to instigate open-minded and tolerant attitudes towards different religions. Second, dialogue, to prevent misuse of religion as a political instrument. And third, engagement, to identify the sources of hatred, intolerance, and extremism, and address their root causes. This means engaging all parts of society, the state, the youth, civil society, religious leaders. To advance these goals, Slovakia has recently undertaken a series of steps at home to counter displays of intolerance. These include a significant amendment to the Criminal Code and Code of Criminal Procedure that allows a more effective prosecution of offense of extremism, including the prosecution of defamation of a nation, race, and belief. The scope to prosecute incitation to violence based on various grounds, including religion, was broadened and redefined. In September 2018, the government supported the new exhibitions in the Holocaust Museum in the city of Sereď with donation of €1 million. In November 2018, Slovak Parliament adopted a working definition of anti-Semitism, which had been developed by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. This would facilitate criminal prosecution of hate crimes and hate speech. Aside from working from home, Slovakia, as a firm believer in multilateralism and the power of joint action, is actively promoting religious tolerance also at multilateral platforms. To name a few instances, supporting the freedom of religion is one of Slovakia's priorities in the United Nations Human Rights Council. As a current chair of the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, we set the promotion of non-discrimination based on religion as one of our main goals. Among other initiatives, we organized a high-level conference on combating anti-Semitism in the OSCE region in Bratislava in February this year. We used the opportunity to remind the OSCE participating states that we cannot overlook manifestations of anti-Semitism and intolerance and need to counter the extremist agenda that once again seems to be getting fertile grounds in Europe. And lastly, Slovakia continues to provide development and humanitarian aid to vulnerable persons in partner countries, including in the Middle East and Africa, and carries out humanitarian activities according to the needs of the international community. We continue to view any attack on religious freedoms not only as an unjust threat to those whom they target, but also to the country's own stability. Promotion of religious freedom is therefore of both a moral and a strategic value. I thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Uzbekistan, His Excellency Abdulaziz Kamilov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Uzbekistan.
Thank you. Dear Ambassador Brownback, distinguished participants of the conference, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to express my sincere gratitude for the invitation of the delegation of Uzbekistan for the Second International Conference to Advance Religious Freedom. We consider this as a recognition by the international community of the unprecedented reforms being carried out in Uzbekistan under the leadership of President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. These reforms are stable and irreversible. The real progress is observed in the sphere of ensuring religious freedom in Uzbekistan. First and foremost, attention is being paid to improving and liberalizing the national legislation. The practical procedures of producing, importing, and disseminating religious literature were simplified. The registration process of religious organizations was further optimized. Thus, since early 2019 alone, new religious organizations were registered in Uzbekistan, including those of non-Islamic faith, the Sunbagin Christian Church, Pentecostal Revival Church, and Evangelical Christian Baptist Church. The composition of the Council of Confessions has been expanded by adding to it the representatives of religious minority organizations, Jehovah's Witnesses, Union of Evangelical Christian Baptist Church, and Center Full Gospel Church. The religious education and enlightenment remains an important factor for spiritual and moral renewal of society. The government of Uzbekistan endorsed and encouraged active participation of women in religious upbringing of youth. For the first time in 20 years, the law on freedom of conscience and religious organization is being revised. We intend to involve international experts to this process, including those from the United States. We have already held preliminary discussions with participation of the experts of the Office of the Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedoms in Brownback. The draft law will be delivered soon to the U.S. Helsinki Commission, the OSCE Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, and the UN Special Rapporteur Ahmad Shahid for international expert evaluation. We are carrying out a profound work on decriminalization and the radicalization of persons charged with crimes related to religion. In this, we are proceeding from the principle enlightenment against ignorance. More than 20,000 prisoners who were sentenced on religious grounds have been pardoned. In May this year, on the instruction of the President of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, a special plane delivered to Tashkent 156 Uzbek citizens, mainly women and children, escorted by deceptive ways to the area of armed conflict in the Middle East, and especially in Syria. At the moment, they are being given jobs and going through sooner social rehabilitation in society. The humanitarian operation was carried out proceeding from the norms of international law, provisions of the resolution of the UN Security Council, and close cooperation with the ICRC and UNICEF. Dear participants of the forum, we are grateful to Secretary Pompeo for the decision to delist Uzbekistan from the countries of particular concern list in the sphere of religious freedom. Taking this opportunity, I'd like also to express my deepest gratitude to Ambassador Brownback for his invaluable contribution in our cooperation to advance religious freedom. We are committed to undertake broad cooperation with international government and non-government organizations, including the relevant bodies of the United Nations, OSCE, European Union, the United States, and other interested parties in the framework of ensuring religious freedoms in Uzbekistan. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We'll now hear from Hungary, His Excellency Peter Szijjártó, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dear colleagues, it's absolutely an honor to be invited and an honor to represent a country which has been Christian for the last 1,019 years. It's an honor to represent a country here which has protected Christianity many times throughout its history and is still proud to be Christian nowadays as well, and argues in favor of Christianity and Christian culture to be given the priority in Europe. Our constitution starts with the word God, and the introduction of the constitution says that we acknowledge the role of Christianity in preserving the Hungarian nation. We Christians, unfortunately, do have some sad duties nowadays. First of all, to understand that Christianity is the most persecuted religion on all over the earth. All 4 or 5 men and women who are persecuted for their belief are Christians. And if we look at the international discourse, and if we look at the discussion going on in European media or political elite, unfortunately, we have to see that Christianophobia is being portrayed as if it was the last acceptable form of discrimination, which is totally unacceptable. And if you look at the declarations and resolutions of international organizations, you will hardly find any reference to tortures and challenges which the Christian communities have to face all over the world. Even in the European Union, when I ask the Foreign Affairs Council to refer to Christian communities in the Middle East, for example, the most I can reach is that the expression religious minorities will be included in the text. But I really do believe that if we Christians do not speak up in favor of the Christian communities, no one else will do so. And if you look at the facts, they say that 245 million Christians are being persecuted all over the world, which means that every 9th man and women who are Christian are under persecution. In 4,136 cases, Christians were killed last year, which means that there are 11 Christians being killed every day all over the world. And 1,266 churches were either ruined or attacked during the last year. That's why we urge all international organizations to leave hypocrisy and political correctness behind and address this issue properly, or at least to be brave enough to speak about that openly, honestly, and in a straightforward manner. We Hungarians are the first ones to establish a separate state secretariat in the government, which has only one duty: to look after and monitor the destiny and the situation of the Christian communities all over the world. And if there's a need, we help. So far, we spent $36.5 million on strengthening the Christian communities where they live, because our basic approach is that we do not want to help the Christian communities, the members of the Christian communities, to leave their homes, but to help them to be able to stay and to be stronger there, because our principle is bring help where it is needed and don't bring problems where there are no problems yet, at least. In this framework, we have rebuilt houses of 1,200 Christian families in Iraq to be able to return. We are building schools for the Christians in the Middle East with the Chaldean Church and with the Syrian Orthodox Church. We cover the medical costs of the Christian hospitals, 3 of them, in Syria. We are just now reconstructing 33 Christian churches in Lebanon. And we carry out a comprehensive development and construction program on the Nineveh Plain. Unfortunately, we Hungarians do have a first-hand experience of persecuting any kind of religion under the communist regime, where practicing Christian religion was only possible in secret. And we don't want these times to return, to be repeated anywhere in the world. That's why we cherish, Ambassador, the leadership of the US administration in this regard. And I'm happy to announce here that the 2nd International Conference on Persecuted Christians, based upon the initiative of Prime Minister Orban, will take place this year, November, in Budapest again. Thank you very much for your efforts, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Tunisia, His Excellency Kemias Genaou, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Tunisia.
Thank you, Ambassador. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like first of all to thank Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and the State Department for organizing this important and timely conference. I believe that such an event has the strong merit of reviving our firm belief and commitment to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion as a fundamental human rights enshrined in a number of key international documents. The Universal Declaration on Human Rights and the International Covenant on Human Rights, as well as the United Nations Declaration on the elimination of all forms of discrimination based on religion, have set the applicable international standards for the promotion and protection of this right. They stipulate, I quote, interference of any kind with what people believe and coercion in matters of religion are prohibited, and that the state is obligated to respect the observance and practice by individuals of their religion, end of quote. It is important to underline that the respect of religious liberty is an essential condition for maintaining peace and stability in the world, and history is particularly abundant with illustrative examples of how disregard and infringement of this fundamental freedom have brought directly or indirectly hatred, wars, and great suffering to mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, Tunisia has a strong tradition of tolerance and respect of religious freedom, which stems from a long and rich history of religious diversity. Though a majority Muslim country since the 7th century, Tunisia has been home for Judaism and Christianity for many centuries before. Today, thousands of Jews perform every year their pilgrimage to El Ghariba, one of the oldest synagogues in the world, located on the Mediterranean island of Jerba. Their religious festivities are commonly celebrated by all Tunisians, regardless of their faith. It is a fine example of tolerance and mutual respect. Tunisia has also strong Christian roots. Very significant ancient church history took place in this very same land. Some of the early church fathers were born and lived in this country, such as Saint Augustine, a Roman African early Christian theologian whose writing influenced the development of Western Christianity, or Tertullian, known as the father of Western theology. The Christian population in Tunisia currently comprises Catholics, Protestants, Russian Orthodox, French Reformists, and Anglicans. This heritage of religious diversity and strong tradition of tolerance has shaped the Tunisian culture and identity. It accounts also for the strong official commitment to freedom of religion and the protection of religious minorities, a commitment which reflects both at the legal setting but also in practice through concrete measures to protect religious minorities, secure places of worship, and disseminate the culture of tolerance and peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. In fact, the Constitution guarantees freedom of religion or belief and the right to peacefully exercise the religious practice for everyone. Tunisia has been adopting bold reforms to reconcile its laws with its new progressive constitution of 2014 and to bring to its national law process and practices into line with universal norms. Ladies and gentlemen, today, as Tunisia is going through a political transition, we strongly believe that upholding religious freedom is an essential part of our commitment to democracy and human rights. It is even a necessary condition to the success of this transition. Equally, we believe that protecting the religious liberty is part of our struggle against religious fanaticism, violent extremism, and terrorism which deny to the others the most fundamental human rights, the right to life. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now hear from the Netherlands, His Excellency Stephanus Abraham Blok, the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Ambassador. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by congratulating the United States of America on hosting this conference to the advantage of religious freedom. It sometimes feels as if the world as a whole seems to be growing more intolerant, whether towards religious minorities and people who don't hold to a particular belief, or towards LGBTI people. Let me start by saying that human rights are there for everybody, worldwide, and they are inextricably linked and unalienable. If we wish to advance religious tolerance and freedom, what exactly do we need to promote? Achieving a society in which every person can enjoy his or her right to freedom of religion or belief requires persistence and hard work from all of us, not just by government, but by society as a whole, as shown by the experience of many countries, including my own. The climate of religious tolerance doesn't just fall into your lap. I'm glad to see so many colleagues here at this conference to discuss the crucial issues of religious freedom. And I'm proud to represent a country where tolerance towards those who think differently is the norm, where there is a separation between church and state, where people are free to worship as they wish or not at all, and where we cherish the bonds forged by our polar landscape, working together in spite of our differences, respecting each other's rights. We value religious freedom as one of the key elements of our overall human rights policy. We hold that the right to freedom of religion or belief cannot be achieved without observance of other rights, such as freedom of expression, equal rights for women and equal rights for LGBTI people, enabling everyone to participate in society, irrespective of religion, belief, political views, race, gender, sexual orientation, or gender identity. We have best practices to share, and we want to learn from others. We also want to reinforce our policy. That's why we've recently made more funds available. That's why we've recently appointed a special envoy on freedom of religion or belief, Jos Dauma, who's here with me today. He will be our interlocutor on these issues for the next few years. That's also why we support the Istanbul process, guiding the implementation of Human Rights Council Resolution 1618. I'm proud to say that we will be hosting the 7th session of that important process in the Netherlands next November. Our aim is to look not only at how we can combat religious intolerance, but also at how we foster religious tolerance. We'll take a practical approach to the conference. We won't be discussing abstractions, but promoting an inclusive exchange of best practices between practitioners, faith-based actors, and people in the field. Because that's what we need in order to foster a climate of religious tolerance. And we hope to make a positive contribution to that goal during the 7th session in the Netherlands. Fostering religious intolerance requires courage, communication, and honest exchange, and patience. Mutual understanding comes in small steps. Sometimes we can't reach an understanding, and then it's best to agree to disagree. Sometimes fiery passions are ignited. After all, our beliefs are at the core of what defines us as human beings. And that's exactly why we need clear rules of the road, sound agreement on the bottom lines, respect for important principles like non-violence, equal treatment, and mutual respect. Principles which have been codified in international treaties and documents, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 18 of the Declaration states that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. And this remains as true today as it was in 1948, when the Declaration was adopted by all of us. It contains a universal principle, a vision of hope we all still share, but which, unfortunately, has not yet become a reality. And to paraphrase Eleanor Roosevelt, for all men and women everywhere. But that must remain our goal for all humanity, whether it's Christians and Yazidis in Iraq and Syria, Tibetan Buddhists in China, Muslims in Myanmar, Baha'i in Iran, or for that matter, non-believers all over the globe. The right enshrined in Article 18 is for all, regardless of gender, sexual preference, race, or religious affiliation. This article remains the foundation of our discussions here at this conference today and at the 7th session of the Istanbul process we are proud to be hosting in November. And I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Iraq, His Excellency Mohammed Ali Abdullah Mood Al-Hakim, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Iraq.
Thank you, Ambassador. I will deliver my statement in Arabic, just to change the pace here. Thank you very much. أنتهز فرصة هذا المؤتمر نعرب عن الامتنان العالي لوزارة الخارجية الأمريكية على إقامة وتنظيم هذا المؤتمر المهم والإشادة بآثاره الإيجابية على العلاقات الإنسانية بين مجتمعاتنا. السيدات والسادة، أن تعايش الأديان في العراق يمتد بجذوره إلى الحضارات القديمة في بلاد الرافدين ثم إلى العصر الإسلامي، وساعد الموقع الجغرافي للعراق وخصوبة أرضه وتنوع موارده الطبيعية إلى تشكيل بيئة حاضنة للتعايش السلمي للأديان المختلفة. ولا شك أن ثقافة التعايش التي كانت سائدة في العراق أفرزت لنا بيئة ثقافية زاخرة بالإبداع في مجالات عدة منها الأدب والفن والبحث العلمي. لقد عانى العراق من أسوأ هجمة شرسة عرفها التاريخ الإنساني المعاصر، والمتمثلة بما قامت به عصابات داعش الإجرامية من انتهاكات واعتداءات بحق العراقيين من مختلف الأديان والطوائف والقوميات الذين عاشوا بأخاء
ووئام لقرون مضت. وقد تجدد عهد الإخاء بين العراقيين مرة أخرى من خلال نداء المرجعية الدينية في النجف للعراقيين في المدن الوسطى والجنوب بالوقوف جنبا إلى جنب مع تشكيلات القوات المسلحة من أجل الدفاع عن أهلهم المغتصبة أراضيهم والمعتدى على حرمتهم في مدن السنجار ونينوى وصلاح الدين والأنبار وغيرها من المدن وتحريرها واستعادتها والقضاء على عصابات داعش الإرهابية. بعد كل التضحيات تمكن العراق بأبطاله من مختلف الأديان والأطياف والإثنيات من دحر عصابات داعش عسكريا ومساندة قوات التحالف الدولي لهزيمة داعش بقيادة الولايات المتحدة. ولا بد من التأكيد هنا أن مسألة الإرهاب اليوم هي قضية دولية لا تختص بمنطقة أو دولة محددة، وإن داعش هي خطر دولي حقيقي، ولا بد من تضافر جهود الدول كافة للقضاء عليه وعلى أفكاره ومنع تمدده إلى مناطق أخرى. السيدات والسادة، لقد أعد رئيس الجمهورية قانونا جديدا رفعه إلى البرلمان العراقي لحماية النساء اليزيديات اللواتي تعرضن للاضطهاد على يد داعش. كما أننا لنا الفخر أن تقوم الخارجية الأمريكية ليلة أمس بتكريم السيدة باسكال وردة وزوجها السيد ويليام وردة على جهودهم المتميزة في العمل التطوعي في العراق. السيدات والسادة، وضعت حكومة بلادي برنامجا موسعا ومتعدد المحاور للتعامل مع مشكلة المهجرين وإعادتهم إلى مدنهم المحررة من خلال توفير الخدمات الأساسية من إعادة إعمار الكنائس والجوامع ودور العبادة الأخرى في تلك المناطق، والعمل على بناء الصلح والسلم المجتمعي مع التركيز على المكونات المسيحية واليزيدية والشبك والتركمان الشيعة ضمن الأولويات. أود التأكيد على أننا كدول لا بد من الوقوف وقفة موحدة ضد داعش أو أي تنظيم متطرف يهدد مجتمعاتنا وملاحقة فلول هذه العصابات التي تتخذ اليوم من بعض المخيمات ملاذا آمنا، ومحاكمتهم وإنزال العقاب العادل بحقهم، والأخذ بنظر الاعتبار أن هناك عددا كبيرا من عوائل داعش من النساء والأطفال، وعلينا جميعا أن نتعامل مع هذه المشكلة. أخيرا، السيد الرئيس، نؤيد رسالة المؤتمر التي تركز على دعم حرية الأديان والمعتقد للجميع وفي كل مكان دون خوف أو اضطهاد، وبما يحترم كرامة الإنسان والمجتمع. أن حرية العبادة هي حرية الفرد وجزء من حقوق الإنسان. وشكرا جزيلا.
Thank you. We will now hear from Poland. His Excellency Jacek Zaputowicz, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Poland.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by thanking Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and the U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Samuel Brownback, for convening this important ministerial to advance religious freedom. Since the earliest day, Poland has stood for religious freedom. For centuries, Poland has been a safe place for peoples of various creeds: Greek Catholics, Russian Orthodox, Protestants, Jews, and Muslim Tatars. Poland has always considered freedom of religion to be the most fundamental of freedoms. This freedom should be universally respected, protected, and promoted. The recent report by the Department of State on international religious freedom is an important source of information about the observance of the right to religious freedom around the world. We can read from the report that Christians make up around 80% of people suffering from persecution because of the faith they profess. In more than 100 countries across the globe, over 215 million Christians confront intimidation, imprisonment, forced conversion, abuse, or assault. Poland, with a group of like-minded countries, has prepared a resolution designating August 22nd as the International Day on commemorating the victims of acts of violence based on religion or belief. We are very grateful to our partners from the US, Canada, Brazil, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Nigeria, and Pakistan, who were actively engaged in the negotiations and promotion of this initiative. We strongly believe that this International Day will give us an opportunity to engage in activities commemorating victims and assisting survivors who often remain forgotten and left behind. We also hope that this will positively contribute to combating hate crimes related to religion or belief and further strengthen interreligious dialogue and respect for religious diversity. Let me invite you to the debate on the August 22nd in New York during our presidency in the UN Security Council. The objective will be to analyze the scale of religious persecution, as well as to reflect on how to preempt violence impacting persons belonging to religious minorities. As Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in his introductory remarks today, it will be a good opportunity to commemorate that day in our home countries, and Poland is going to prepare initiatives referring to that important international day. Last week in Geneva, on the margins of the session of UN Human Rights Council, Poland organized a meeting with the Iraqi and Brazilian missions entitled "One Step at a Time, Addressing Religious Violence and Persecution." The participants of the meeting pointed out that there is no single solution that would lead to the elimination of religious intolerance in a short time, but it is possible to take gradual actions to this end and to operationalize all existing tools for combating religious violence. In our opinion, ladies and gentlemen, it is necessary to protect religious minorities, especially in those parts of the world where a simple prayer is an act of a great courage. When these voices are silenced, the damage to peace and security occurs. We have to do everything we possibly can not to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Kosovo, His Excellency Dr. Becet Pakuli, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Honorable Ambassador at Large Sam Brombach, dear colleagues and friends, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you and commend you for the initiative taken to organize the second Ministerial to advance religious freedom here today in Washington. Kosovo is a country driven by the principles and values of democracy, human rights, and freedom. Religious freedom is a principle that matters for us because of our history, our heritage, and our future. In charting our path forward, we have only had to look back into our long tradition of peaceful and harmonious coexistence between different religions: Muslims, Catholics, Orthodox, Protestants, Jews, and many other communities that live together, harmony and coexistence. Kosovo comprises a multi-ethnic and multi-confessional country that has a long history of religious tolerance. This fine and sometimes a fragile balance of communities is one of that we have to work very hard to maintain with the help of our international supporters. Isolated incidents against religious freedoms and ethnicities are always addressed by the state through concrete measures according to the law. One of our main commitments has been to build Kosovo as a secular state, to separate clearly and firmly the state from the matter of religion. Our starting point has been our very modern constitution. The constitution promotes the unfiltered practice of religious and gives equal treatment to all religions in Kosovo and their followers. Serbian Orthodox religious and cultural heritage is and will continue to be an indispensable part of Kosovo mosaic. It will continue to drive and to be recognized for what it is. Kosovo is engaged with the Serbian Orthodox Church and ways to support the reconstruction of its site. Kosovo seeks to enhance its protection and offer all needed help. Legal framework of Kosovo constitutes a firm commitment of Kosovo to respect and fully protect the Serbian heritage in our country. Despite the fact that Kosovo is unable to join the international conventions and instruments that promote human, political, social, and cultural rights and freedoms, we have included the United Nations and Council of Europe instruments as part of our legal system in unilateral basis. Currently, our parliament is working to adopt a modern law on religious freedom and rights that enforces these international instruments and our constitutional principles of the national legislation. This law has been drafted in close coordination with the United States, European Union, and Council of Europe, and it can serve as a model for many countries. The new law, which was consulted with all the religious communities in Kosovo, will address their concerns and the issue for which we had a legislative gap in the past, including the fact that there was no clear legal status for religious communities in Kosovo. Kosovo is setting up institutional mechanisms that will strengthen the engagement of the government with all the religious communities in Kosovo. We believe that a strong government, religious communities, relations with all parts will provide a better and stronger environment for all communities to exercise their rights and freedoms. We do believe that religion can contribute towards addressing prejudices and building new bridges of international through pluralism, interethnic and interreligious dialogue, through a coexistence and cooperation founded upon the power of truth and inspiration of law. Kosovo holds a unique tradition of interfaith tolerance and coexistence, and this tradition expressed in our cultural heritage, in the objects of worship, in the architectural values across Kosovo, and is the best testament that we lived together for centuries. This year, in October, we will host in Kosovo the Crown Montana Forum, in which we have included religious freedom as an important topic. I use the chance here to invite you to attend it and continue to discuss from here. Ambassador Bromwich, Kosovo is an example in the region and behind with respect to interfaith tolerance and coexistence. We will promote this value and heritage of Kosovo, and are happy to share it around the world. We will continue to work with the United States government to address the importance of religious freedoms and take joint initiatives with you and other partners here. Thank you for hosting us today in the beautiful Washington. And I would wish to see all of you in Kosovo in the next Grand Montana Forum.
Thank you. We'll next hear from Togo, His Excellency Komlam Edo Robert Dusi, the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Republic of Togo.
Thank you, Ambassador. Excellencies, dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Religious freedom, which is one of the most difficult but essential conquests of democratic modernity, is in danger now in many parts of the world. Violent extremism, under its various ramifications, threaten religious freedom. Religious freedom suffers from obscurantists, fanatical, violent, and dogmatic blindness. Whether in Somalia, Mali, Nigeria, or Burkina Faso, the harm is visible. Places of worship are targeted. Mosques, churches, and synagogues are burned down. Priests and imams are murdered. From the 15th of February to the 12th of May 2019, several religious leaders were murdered by extremist groups in Burkina Faso. On the 15th of February, Antonio Cesar Fernandez, a 72 years old Spanish priest and missionary who was returning from Togo, was killed by a terrorist group a few kilometers after the northern border of Togo on the territory of Burkina Faso. Pastor John Sawadogo was shot dead on the 19th of February. The pastor of the Assembly of God, Elisore from Burkina Faso, on the 31st of April. Pastor Ouedraogo, 2 of his children, and 3 others Christian faithful murdered on the 28th of April during the attack on a church in the northern of Burkina Faso. Father Simeon Yampa, a priest of the Catholic Church in the city of Dablo, on the 12th of May. On the 26th of May 2019, in a Catholic church at Toufle, is a small village in the northern Burkina Faso, 4 people were killed and 2 others seriously injured in an armed attack by 8 terrorists during Mass. Our state in Africa carry out monitoring and regulatory work to guarantee the exercise of religious freedoms, which are fundamental human freedoms. Our states have a duty that they must carry out, which is to protect the exercise of religious freedoms against extremism and the threat of terrorism. In my country, Togo, religious freedom is a right enshrined in the basic law. Indeed, the Constitution of Togo provides that everyone has the right to freedom of conscience, worship, and opinion on the exercise to these rights and freedoms must be done in accordance with the principle of respect for the freedoms of others. Religious denominations have the right to organize and exercise their activities freely in accordance with the law and the principle of secularism. In the name of secularism, the state remains equidistant from the different religious denominations and work in the name of the same principle to the free exercise of religious freedoms. The state prohibits discrimination and the ground of religion. After the unfortunate events of destruction of mosques and churches in Lome in 2018 that were condemned by all religious denominations and the national community, our government has increased its vigilance. Investigations are open to find those responsible for those acts and bring them to justice. In addition, on the 15th of May, our country set up an interdepartmental committee to prevent and combat violent extremism. The Togolese strategy to prevent and combat violent extremism aims to protect compatriots from threats and to protect the free expression of individual freedoms, including religious freedom. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Kazakhstan, His Excellency Doran Abayev, the Minister of Information and Social Development of the Republic of Kazakhstan.
Dear conference participants, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to the government of the United States and personally to the Vice President, the Honorable Michael Pence, the Secretary of State, the Honorable Michael Pompeo, and the Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, the Honorable Sam Brownback, for the initiative and organization at the highest level of the second Ministerial Conference to advance religious freedom. As you know, since independence, the first President of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, took a course to ensure freedom of religion and non-discrimination. Thanks to this, representatives of more than 3,700 religious associations representing 18 faiths live peacefully in our country today. Due to the huge ethnic and religious diversity, Kazakhstan was able to create an authoritative platform for dialogue between civilizations. Thus, 6 congresses of the leaders of the world and the traditional religions have been successfully held in our capital. This is a unique format for discussion of the most pressing issues on the global agenda by the spiritual leaders of our time. Kazakhstan recently held presidential election according to democratic principles such as transparency, fairness, and competitiveness. The new president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, and the Kazakh government reconfirm the policy to ensure religious freedom and the fundamental human rights. The Republic of Kazakhstan intends to continue its work on the development of tolerance and the dialogue between representatives of all faiths without exemptions. Moreover, the leadership of our country will continue to implement all initiatives aimed at countering religious extremism and radicalism. Unfortunately, the citizens of our country have also become victims of the propaganda of destructive ideas. Over the past year alone, Kazakhstan, together with its international partners, has been able to return 600 of its citizens from Syria. They are currently undergoing a process of rehabilitation and involvement in a normal life. Kazakhstan is ready to share its experience and the knowledge in this area. Dear conference participants, at the end of my speech, I would like to emphasize once again that ensuring freedom of citizens' conscience is one of the crucial interests of the Republic of Kazakhstan and is one of the key components of our further democratic development. Kazakhstan is always open to dialogue and mutually beneficial cooperation in order to ensure and protect fundamental rights and freedom of religion. We intend to further improve and strengthen dialogue with religious communities. Let me wish all the participants of the conference success in achieving the common goal of ensuring a peaceful and a prosperous future for our nations. Thank you for your attention.
We'll now hear from Montenegro, His Excellency Dr. Srđan Damjanović, the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me first thank Secretary Pompeo for convening second ministerial meeting to advance religious freedoms, largest of its kind in the world. As we speak today, religious and ethnic groups in many parts of our planet are at risk of persecution on the grounds of their religion or belief. Since our last gathering, we have witnessed horrific acts of violence against religious groups with high number of casualties around the globe. There are numerous cases where freedom of religion is being breached by acts of persecution and discrimination. We cannot be silent to these situations. Religion has been over and over again weaponized, while the voices of so many victims of religion-based violence remain unheard. Religious beliefs are being manipulated in order to fuel acts of violent extremism and terrorism, which are recognized as global threats to security and stability. The pretense of combating terrorism or violent extremism is sometimes used to repress religious minorities and, as a result, to hold them back from practicing their faith. States should put more efforts in combating the roots of violent extremism and terrorism, without making association with any religion, nationality, civilization, or ethnic group. Promoting religious freedoms lies in the very core of Montenegro's rock-solid commitment to preserve peace and stability in the Western Balkans. In turbulent 90s, Montenegro avoided dragging its territory into bloodshed in the name of the religion. Instead, we opted for protection of rights of all religious groups, regardless of their size. That very approach enabled us to grow into a stable, multicultural, multi-religious, and multi-ethnic state. Such policy helped us to achieve membership in NATO and to become a leading candidate for the EU integration. Therefore, my government is firmly committed to further strengthen interreligious tolerance in Montenegrin society. Montenegro fully supports the principle that matters governing religion, belief, and conscience are not to be decided by state, but in the individual's conscience, and endorses the notion people should be free at any time to have to profess, to maintain, to adopt, and to change their own beliefs. It is quoted by EU Statement on Freedom of Religions or Belief from September 23, 1999. It's my pleasure to inform you that in May 2019, after broad and inclusive consultations, the government adopted a draft law on freedom of religion or belief and legal status of religious communities. This draft is aligned with the highest existing international standards. It is fully in accordance with UN conventions, European Convention of Human Rights, rulings of the European Court of Human Rights, and recommendations of the Venice Commission. It emphasizes civic character of the state and that there is no state religion in Montenegro. Along with widening space for every single citizen to freely practice religion or no religion at all on their own conscience, it regulates rights and obligations of religious communities, the procedure of their registration, the issue of state property, and religious literacy. European Commission for Democracy Through Law, much better known as the Venice Commission of the Council of Europe, last month issued a very positive opinion on this law, undeniably confirming the right of Montenegro to protect property and cultural heritage belonging to all citizens, as well as to ensure that national laws are equally applied to all throughout the whole territory of Montenegro. Montenegro is a country where